Wednesday. You know what that means. Time for the Southern California Writers Association Hump Day Book Tour. I'm your host, Maddie Margarita, here with Diana Pardee on tech. Every Wednesday morning, SCWA turns our Facebook page over to a new writer to talk about their books and their work. This morning, we are pleased to have with us Alan Orloff. Alan has won 2 ITW Thriller Awards, a Derringer Award, and this year, his YA thriller, I Play One on TV, won both an Agatha Award and an Anthony Award. Okay, that's hot off the presses, folks, that news. All told, he's published 10 novels and more than 40 short stories. He loves cake and arugula, but not together, never together. He lives and writes currently in South Florida. Welcome, Alan.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here this morning.
Well, you are hot off BoucherCon in Minneapolis.
Yes, that was quite a whirlwind, and I came away with a nice little souvenir, but it was great seeing everybody in person again, that's for sure.
So you just won the Anthony for I Play One on TV, right?
That's correct.
Right. So what was it about that book or that story that you think garnered so much attention?
I think it was the hook, the premise, and I can tell you where I got that story, because when I say I got it, it's not like I thought it up. I got it sent to me in an email. So I have my friend Eric Smith. He sends me this email. It says, Alan, my wife and I, we love watching crime reenactment shows on cable TV. Wouldn't it be cool if there's a teenage actor who portrays a murderer as a young kid on one of these shows, and then somehow the murderer gets out of prison and hunts this kid down, which I thought was a pretty fabulous premise. Now, what Eric did not know at the time was that I had a teenage thespian son who portrayed a killer on a crime reenactment show on Investigation Discovery called Evil Kin. That was me. That happened to me and my kid. He's now an adult actor in LA. So the best thing about getting an idea like that, I didn't have to do any research. I lived this book. So it gave me the opportunity, well, except for the fact that the murderer didn't come out of prison to chase us down. However, I just learned that in the last few months, there were 2 killers involved. They both are out of prison now. So we'll be relocating shortly.
Yeah.
No,
you used to write there. Yeah.
So it gave me the opportunity to put in this book a lot of the things that I went through as a stage parent, because our son started acting when he was 8 or 9 years old, and he would get auditions. He would get auditions in Baltimore, and I was living in the DC area. So I would drive him an hour and a half to this audition. And if you're not familiar with auditions, a lot of it is by the look. If you're like a commercial, or if you're in a TV show, you have to look like your family or a certain way. So they can tell within 30 seconds once you enter the audition room whether or not you're right for the part. So sometimes these auditions would last literally 3 minutes. So I drive him an hour and a half to Baltimore. He'd take this audition for 3 minutes, and I drive him an hour and a half back. So those were
there's a brutality to that, Alan.
To all involved, yes. But another thing, so they have a call for actors, but they want the certain type. So you walk into the waiting room at the casting place, and there'll be like a dozen kids that all look identical. It is hilarious. So I put these kind of things into the book. So it's sort of, there's some real world kind of situations. There's a little bit of humor. When I was growing up, the drama kids were always, and I would take Stuart to he's my son, to his rehearsals he was in like a summertime youth players thing. And I would walk into the auditorium, and the kids, to be an actor, I guess you have to be super extroverted. And I'm a super introvert. So I would walk in, and the kids would just be bouncing off the walls and running and screaming and dancing and jumping. It was a shock to my system. So I try to portray all this in the book, and it was a fun book to write. I hope it's a fun book to read. Here's the cover.
Oh, great cover.
And it's a great cover. And it's got a pretty low body count, so there's really not a lot of violence on the page. It's more suspenseful than anything else.
Well, now you're making this book sound very easy to write, but no book is easy to write. And so this is your
This is my 10th
10th?
published book. And I've got a bunch of books that are somewhere in the pipeline or sitting on my hard drive waiting for destruction or something or other.
Aging properly in a file drawer somewhere.
Well, I hope so. That my first manuscript is buried underneath 6 feet under the ground in an asbestos-lined container, so it's no harm to society.
For posterity.
For
For
protection mostly.
For 100 years from now. So, okay, so that's interesting. You know, everybody always wants to know where people get, particularly mystery writers, where they get these great ideas and hooks.
Well, yeah, you're right. And it was great to get that idea, but now every time I check my email and I don't get an idea, I'm just a little bit disappointed.
That's a hard standard to meet. So let's talk about I Know Where You Sleep. So
yes.
that was the book that you published before I Play One on TV, right?
Yes.
I see a certain thematic feel on the covers I like.
Well, these both were published by the same
Yeah.
publishing house, Down and Out Books, and they're terrific to work with. This is an adult book. It's a private eye novel. And when I was cutting my teeth reading private eye novels, I went to Spencer. He was my go-to guy, Robert B. Parker. I loved the series. So in my mind, all my books sort of have that same Spencer template, although they're not PI books and there's not Hawk and everything. So I know it sounds weird, but I sort of write to that same thing. But this was my ninth book, and it was the first one that was actually able to use a PI. And that was a lot of fun. And it was nominated for a Seamus Award for Best First PI Novel, which was nice. And it's a little bit.
Is that an MWA?
That's a Private Eye Writers Association award, and it's just for PI novels. And my twist on this sort of the general trope. My private investigator has a small agency, and he's brought his sister on board to kind of handle some of the administrative aspects.
Love that dynamic.
But she is what you might call a loose cannon. So she just does her own thing. She tries to get these pro bono cases to work on for kind of her own reasons. And she is a little bit, you might say, violent. And this one it's much more violent than the other one. It's for adults. But it was a lot of fun to write to, and hopefully people will find it entertaining.
So Spencer, Robert Urich or Mark Wahlberg?
I haven't seen the movie yet. I haven't. So I like Robert Ulrich, and I love Avery Brooks's Hawk. Yeah. I don't know if you can improve upon those guys, but it's on my list of movies to watch. But I got a million of those.
When you were talking about it, I was sort of thinking about Harlan Coben and Myron Bolitar and Wynn, and but I love the fact that it's his sister. Because that just takes it, to a very primal conflict that I love.
She borders on being a psychopath. I mean, she's had some severe trauma in her past, and she just wants to get kind of revenge on not just one person, but sort of on a class of people that has done her wrong. So, he has to try to solve the case, but keep tabs on her to make sure he doesn't lose his license or worse.
Sure, that's relatable to anybody who's ever had a sibling. So, and I came from 5 kids, so at least one of us, odds are
borders on psychopath.
Right, odds are not good. So, why mystery and thriller? What is it about the genre and do you write other things within mystery?
Yeah, when I was a kid, I started reading Stephen King and Dean Koontz, and a lot of science fiction, Heinlein and Asimov and Frederick Pohl, a lot of those guys. So I sort of started reading a lot of horror and science fiction. And then I got a job in Boston, and my boss said, "You like reading?" And here's Spencer. So I love the Spencer books, and I read, then I moved into Robert Crace and Elvis Cole and kind of the wisecracking PI. So I love that stuff. And I mean, that's sort of what I read now. So I figured that's what I should write now. But I have written a horror novel called The Taste. And I had so much fun writing that hopefully maybe I'll get a chance to write another horror novel in the future. So right now, any kind of crime fiction, so mystery, suspense, thriller, and a couple little touches on horror here and there.
So, I mean, the mystery genre is so all encompassing, and there are a lot of novels out there and whatever. But from your perspective, what is it about your books that you think are the stories that you write? Or unique?
I write for entertainment. I write to entertain. And there are many people. There are many reasons people read, and many reasons people write. I put entertainment as sort of my ultimate goal. So I want people to be turning the pages quickly. I try to infuse them with some humor where I can. I don't have a lot of lengthy descriptions or ruminations. I like to keep the action moving because that's kind of what I like to read. When there's enough, if I want bad news or stuff, I just turn on the TV and watch the news. But I like to just be entertaining and get through stuff. And usually, I mean, after a while, you write your book and a theme, the second or third revision, it's sort of a theme emerges. So my books, they do have themes and I don't want to say messages, but I mean, you can tell that there's a certain worldview of my books that may or may not reflect my own worldview.
So, okay, so we talked about 10 novels, and I always wonder, so is 11 easier or harder?
I don't find them to be any easier, really. Maybe a little easier because you know what processes don't work. But the most important thing about having written all these novels is you have at least for me, I have the confidence of knowing that when I write my first draft and it's really, 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 really bad, that I know that I can make it good and decent at the end because I've done that 10, 15 times, right? So I don't despair when things aren't going well, or I look at the page and, see John run, John, run. It's that kind of stupid prose because I know that eventually I'll get to the point where it'll be entertaining. So I guess it's the confidence that doesn't make it easier, it just eases my mind that I'll be able to do it.
And when you're writing that the drafts and you're getting through this and you're thinking about submitting it to your editor and whatever, what are the things or do you have touch points or standards or benchmarks that say, okay, I'm not going to rewrite this thing again. This is where the best I can be for now, or for where I am. Are there certain things that you look for, or how do you decide?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great question. That's a great question. I think that when the changes I make don't make it better, they just make it different, that's when I stop. Right. So, I mean, I'll work on it. Sometimes I can go 2 revisions and make the scene good. Sometimes it takes 22 revisions. But when it's like, should I put a that or a witch, or brown or off brown? I mean, that's when it's like, okay, move on to the next thing. So,
like when you're writing those college texts or papers, and you're like, okay, so 100 words, that, and that. Right. But so. That's really interesting. I think a lot of writers don't have that confidence and don't know when it's hard. You get to a point where you could become story blind, and you're not even able to tell the difference whether your changes are better or just different. So it does get to a point where you can get to that point. So, but your experience keeps you from getting.
Well, not all the time. Sometimes I'm like, well, what? Gosh, that's why it's good to have my wife as a first reader. I've got a great critique group. My critique group has been meeting, the same 5 people have been meeting every month for over 11 years. We have not missed a month. And these are some of the most accomplished. It's Donna Andrews, Ellen Crosby, John Gilstrap, and Art Taylor, and me. And so I bring it to them if I have any questions, and they tell me yes, no, what to do. So I'm very fortunate.
So you have some trusted advisors with high standard.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think every writer aspires to develop that. So I know you said that you want your books to entertain and that's your goal. But as far as emotions, like when somebody reads the last page of one of your books, What do you want them to feel?
Well, for a mystery, I look at it like this. I want them to go, oh, I never saw that coming, but of course, it's the only thing that makes sense. So if I can get the reader to feel that at the end of a mystery, beautiful. For a thriller, which is a little more emotional rather than cerebral, I want them to be like, oh man, that was a great ride. I'm glad my protagonist, my hero, made it through, and see you later, bad guys. That was awesome. And that twist at the end, I never saw that coming, but it was awesome.
Well, I think if that doesn't drive people to run out and buy your books, I don't know what will. Where can people find your books, Alan?
You can order them at Barnes & Noble, I think. You can find them all online on Amazon. A few of them are in audio. You can get them at, I guess, audible.com. They're all available for Kindle.
And do you have any appearances coming up to talk about?
Yeah, well, I have some in South
You can
Florida.
talk about it. You're not contractually obligated to secrecy.
No, I can talk about anything I want to talk about. I'm appearing at the Prime Senior Expo, October 30th here in Boca Raton. It's this big thing put on by the Sun Sentinel. And I've got, I do some workshops online. I don't have any.
So people can find out about those on your website, right?
If I ever update it.
Yeah.
It's due for an update. I'll be at Left Coast Crime, and I'll be at BoucherCon. I'll be at Malice Domestic. I go to the major mystery conferences and conventions.
So if any.
I was going to say, and yes, people can interact with me online on Facebook and Twitter.
Great, wonderful. Thank you for being here. We wish you continued luck. Are you working on something now?
I am, and this I'm not allowed to tell you. So.
See, I knew we would get to another mystery. I just had to keep asking the right questions. All right, well, hopefully when you finish whatever this is, you'll come back and we can talk about it.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Well, thank you, Alan. Thank you, everyone, for being with us. If you enjoyed this video, please share it on Facebook. You can also find another copy, edited version of this on SCWA Writers Online on YouTube. And you can also find more author interviews there. So until next time, keep reading and stay safe. I'm Maddie Margarita. This has been the SCWA Hump Day Book Tour.